I never thought I'd be one of those guys, the kind who gets cheated on, humiliated, and left questioning everything they believed about love and trust. But here I am, sitting alone at our kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, replaying the conversation that shattered my world. It started like any other evening. Sarah came home from work, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she walked into the living room where I was reading. She looked different. Not just tired or stressed, something sharper, colder. Like she wasn't even trying anymore. "Hey," I said, putting down my book. "How was your day?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned against the doorway, arms crossed over her chest, a smirk playing on her lips. That smirk, it still haunts me. It was the look of someone who knew they had all the power and wasn't afraid to use it. "Darling," she purred, her voice dripping with mockery, "we need to talk." My stomach tightened. Those 4 words are never followed by anything good. Still, I nodded, forcing a smile. "Sure. What's up?" She stepped closer, her eyes locked onto mine. For a moment, I thought maybe this was going somewhere romantic. Maybe she wanted to surprise me with plans for our anniversary or tell me she finally agreed to take that vacation we'd been talking about forever. But then she spoke again, and my blood ran cold. "I need experience with other men," she said flatly, as if ordering a latte at Starbucks. "And you have no right to stop me." For a second, I thought I misheard her. Surely, this wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But the way she stood there, smirking like she'd won some twisted game, told me otherwise. "You're joking, right?" I managed to choke out, my voice shaking. Her laughter cut through me like a knife. "Do I sound like I'm joking?" "Come on, Adam. Be reasonable. You can't expect me to stay faithful when there's so much out there I haven't tried yet." Every word felt like a punch to the gut. Betrayal, anger, disbelief, they all swirled inside me until I couldn't breathe. How could she say these things? After everything we'd built together, after all the promises we'd made. But worst of all, the way she acted like I should just accept it. Like her betrayal didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. I sat there frozen, my mind scrambling to catch up with the reality she was forcing on me. The woman I loved, or thought I loved, was standing in front of me, dismantling years of trust as casually as if she were rearranging furniture. My chest tightened, each breath shallow and labored, like the air itself had turned heavy. "Sarah," I said finally, my voice cracking under the weight of everything unsaid. "What happened to us? To you? Did you ever care at all?" Her expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face before it hardened again. She uncrossed her arms and took a step back, creating distance between us, not just physically, but emotionally. It felt deliberate, calculated. "Care?" she repeated, tilting her head as though testing the word's meaning. Of course I cared. But caring isn't enough, Adam. Not for me. Not anymore. Not enough. I echoed, incredulous. "So what, then? What is enough? Sleeping around. Breaking every promise we ever made because you're bored." Her lips curled into that same infuriating smirk. "Don't make this about boredom. This is about growth. About living life fully, without limits or regrets. You wouldn't understand, you've always played it safe. Predictable. Boring." Her words hit me like a slap, stinging not just because they came from her, but because deep down, I couldn't deny some truth in them. I had played it safe. I'd chosen stability over spontaneity, comfort over chaos. And maybe, just maybe, that hadn't been enough for her. But still this. This wasn't an answer, it was destruction. "And what about us?" I asked, my voice quieter now, tinged with desperation. "What about the life we built together? Was none of it real to you?" She hesitated for the first time since she walked through the door. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and I saw a flicker of vulnerability, a crack in the armor she'd worn so confidently moments ago. But it vanished almost instantly, replaced by steely resolve. "You can't build a life on lies, Adam," she said softly, almost gently. "And the lie here is that either of us was truly happy. I'm sorry if this hurts you, but staying would hurt both of us more." The room seemed to shrink around me, the walls closing in as her words sank in. She wasn't just leaving me, she was rewriting our entire history, reframing it as one long mistake. And yet, even as anger surged within me, I couldn't bring myself to lash out. Because somewhere beneath the betrayal, beneath the pain, I recognized the person she used to be, the woman who laughed freely, dreamed wildly, and wanted to change the world. Maybe she hadn't disappeared entirely. Maybe she'd simply been buried under layers of compromise and routine. But none of that excused what she was doing now. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice hollow. "You walk away, no apologies, no explanations beyond your need for experience. Just goodbye." She met my eyes again, her own filled with a mixture of guilt and determination. It's not easy for me either, Adam. But sometimes endings are necessary for new beginnings. For both of us. Her words hung in the air, sharp and final. New beginnings. The phrase should have offered hope, renewal, but coming from her lips, it felt like a dismissal. As if my life could simply reset once she left, as if I'd emerge unscathed from the wreckage of our relationship. When she turned to leave, I didn't stop her. I couldn't. Watching her walk out the door felt like watching part of myself disappear with her. Yet, as the sound of her heels faded into silence, another emotion began to rise within me, one I hadn't expected: clarity. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe endings were necessary. But not hers, not dictated by her selfishness or her sudden desire to live. No, this ending needed to come from me. From a place of self-respect, of reclaiming the pieces of myself she'd tried to diminish. I stood up slowly, my legs shaky but resolute. The coffee cup sat untouched on the table, cold and bitter, a perfect metaphor for what remained of our marriage. I picked it up, carried it to the sink, and poured it down the drain. Then I grabbed my keys and headed outside, breathing in the cool night air. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain: I deserved better than what she'd given me. Better than betrayal disguised as liberation. Better than a love that crumbled when faced with the first hint of dissatisfaction. As I drove away from the house we'd shared, I realized I wasn't running from her, I was running toward myself. Toward the man I used to be before fear and complacency dulled my edges. The man who, despite his flaws, still believed in love, not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that builds you up. And maybe, just maybe, that belief wasn't lost after all. The days that followed felt surreal, like I was living in the aftermath of an earthquake. The ground beneath me had shifted, leaving me unsteady and disoriented. But amidst the chaos, there was also a strange sense of clarity, a quiet determination to rebuild what had been shattered. I spent the first few nights at a friend's apartment, crashing on his couch while I figured out my next move. He didn't ask many questions, just handed me a beer and let me talk when I needed to. When words failed me, he sat in silence, offering the kind of support that doesn't need explaining. For that, I was grateful. But as the initial shock wore off, reality began to settle in. Sarah hadn't just walked out of our marriage, she'd taken pieces of me with her, pieces I wasn't sure I could recover. My confidence, my trust, my belief in love, they all felt fractured, scattered like shards of glass across the floor of my life. Picking them up wouldn't be easy, but I knew I had no choice. If I wanted to move forward, I had to start somewhere. One evening, after another restless night, I found myself wandering through the city streets. It was late, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. Streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and the hum of distant traffic filled the otherwise quiet night. I ended up at a small park we used to visit together, an ironic twist of fate, or maybe just habit pulling me back to familiar places. Sitting on a bench overlooking the pond, I stared at the water rippling under the moonlight. Memories flooded in, uninvited, lazy Sunday mornings, laughter echoing through the trees, promises whispered in hushed tones. Promises she'd broken without a second thought. Anger bubbled inside me again, hot and raw. How dare she dismiss everything we'd shared so callously? How dare she act like it meant nothing? And yet, as much as I wanted to hold onto that anger, to let it fuel me, something stopped me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the realization that holding onto bitterness would only keep me tethered to her, even if she was gone. I didn't want to give her that power over me, not anymore. Instead, I decided to focus on what I could control, my own healing. I started small. Each morning, I wrote down one thing I was grateful for, forcing myself to find light even in the darkest moments. Some days, it was something simple, a good cup of coffee, a song that made me smile. Other days, it was harder, and I scribbled vague phrases like still breathing or made it through the night. But slowly, those tiny acts of gratitude began to add up, chipping away at the weight pressing down on me. I also threw myself into work, pouring my energy into projects I'd neglected during the final months of my marriage. Colleagues noticed the change, commenting on how focused I seemed. One coworker, Mia, went so far as to invite me to join her book club, a suggestion I might have laughed off before. This time, though, I said yes. What did I have to lose? The first meeting was awkward, as these things often are. A group of strangers sitting around someone's living room, debating the merits of a novel none of us fully understood. But halfway through the discussion, I realized something surprising: I was enjoying myself. Not because the book was particularly brilliant, but because I was engaging with people who saw me as more than just the guy whose wife left him. They saw me as a person, with thoughts, opinions, a sense of humor. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I existed outside the shadow of Sarah's betrayal. Mia became a regular presence in my life after that. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly straightforward. Unlike Sarah, she didn't play games or hide behind cryptic remarks. When she asked how I was doing, she genuinely wanted to know. Over time, our conversations deepened, moving beyond surface-level pleasantries to topics that mattered: dreams, fears, regrets. One rainy afternoon, as we sat in a cozy cafe sipping tea, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you still love her?" I hesitated, staring into my mug as if the answer might be swirling somewhere in the depths of chamomile and honey. "I don't think it's about loving her anymore," I said finally. "It's about forgiving her, and forgiving myself. Letting go of the anger, the hurt, the idea of who I thought she was." Mia nodded thoughtfully, her eyes soft with understanding. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," I admitted with a rueful laugh. "But it's also freeing. Like carrying around this giant boulder for years, and suddenly realizing I can put it down." She smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Then keep putting it down, Adam. One piece at a time." Her words stayed with me long after we parted ways that day. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip overnight, it was a process, messy and nonlinear. There were days when the pain felt fresh, like an open wound refusing to heal. But there were also moments of peace, fleeting yet profound, where I caught glimpses of the man I was becoming. A few weeks later, I received a letter from Sarah. At first, I considered throwing it away unopened, unwilling to let her disrupt the fragile progress I'd made. But curiosity got the better of me, and I tore open the envelope with trembling hands. Her words were brief, almost clinical. She apologized, not for cheating or leaving, but for the way she'd handled things. She claimed she'd never intended to hurt me, though reading between the lines, it was clear she still believed her actions were justified. The letter ended with a single sentence that struck me as both heartbreaking and infuriating. "I hope you find happiness, Adam. Even if it's not with me." I stared at the page for a long time, emotions swirling like storm clouds. Part of me wanted to crumple it up and toss it in the trash, erasing her from my life completely. But instead, I folded it neatly and tucked it away in a drawer, a reminder of where I'd been, and how far I'd come. Because the truth was, I was finding happiness. Not the kind tied to grand gestures or fairy tale endings, but the quiet, steady kind that grows from within. It came from rediscovering parts of myself I'd forgotten, from building connections rooted in honesty and mutual respect. From learning to forgive, not just Sarah, but myself. As I closed the drawer and turned off the light, I realized something important: Sarah's departure hadn't destroyed me. Instead, it had forced me to confront the cracks in my foundation, to repair what needed fixing and let go of what couldn't be saved. And while the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear: I was ready to face it. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Months passed, and the rhythm of my life began to settle into something new, something unfamiliar yet undeniably mine. The sharp edges of Sarah's betrayal had softened with time, dulled by the small victories I'd accumulated along the way: a morning run that left me breathless but alive, a heartfelt conversation with Mia over coffee, the quiet satisfaction of crossing another day off the calendar without letting bitterness consume me. But just as I started to feel like I was finally moving forward, life threw me another curveball, one I hadn't seen coming. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was at home, flipping through channels while half-heartedly scrolling through social media on my phone. My thumb paused mid-scroll when I saw her name pop up in a notification: "Sarah tagged you in a post." My stomach tightened. For a moment, I considered ignoring it entirely, pretending I hadn't noticed. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the link, bracing myself for whatever awaited me. The photo was simple enough: a candid shot of Sarah sitting at a cafe table, laughing with someone whose face wasn't visible in the frame. The caption beneath it read, "Sometimes endings lead to beginnings. Here's to growth, love, and second chances." My chest constricted. Second chances? Was she talking about us? About me? Or was this some cryptic nod to whatever new chapter she'd embarked upon since walking out of our marriage? Before I could process the flood of emotions swirling inside me, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Her name flashed across the screen, bold and unavoidable. I stared at it for what felt like an eternity, torn between answering and letting it go to voicemail. Finally, exhaling sharply, I swiped to accept the call. "Adam," she said softly, her voice tinged with hesitancy. "I didn't think you'd pick up." "Yeah, well," I trailed off, unsure of how to finish the sentence. "What do you want, Sarah?" There was a pause on the other end, long enough for me to wonder if she'd hung up. Then she spoke again, her tone uncharacteristically vulnerable. I wanted to explain. Not justify, not defend, just explain. I leaned back against the couch, gripping the phone tightly. "Explain what?" "That you left because you needed experience. That you thought staying would hurt more than leaving." "No," she said quickly, her voice breaking slightly. "Not exactly. Look, I know I hurt you. And I'm so sorry for that. But Adam, you have to understand, I wasn't running from you. I was running to something. Something I didn't even fully understand at the time. Her words caught me off guard. Running to something. Hadn't she been clear about her reasons back then? Experience, freedom, growth, all those things she'd thrown in my face like they were excuses for abandoning everything we'd built together. But now, hearing her speak with such raw honesty, I realized there was more to her story. More pain, more confusion, more fear than she'd ever let on. I wasn't happy, Adam, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Not really. And neither were you. We both stayed in that marriage longer than we should have, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I thought leaving would fix everything, for both of us. But instead, it just made things worse. Her admission hit me like a punch to the gut. She wasn't wrong, we had been unhappy, though I'd convinced myself otherwise. Our relationship had become a series of routines and compromises, each of us too afraid to rock the boat or admit that maybe we weren't meant to sail forever. But hearing her say it aloud, owning her part in our unraveling, forced me to confront my own role in the mess we created. And now? I asked cautiously, my voice steadier than I expected. Are you happy now? She hesitated before responding. I don't know. I thought I would be. I thought finding someone else, or trying to, would fill the emptiness I felt. But it didn't. If anything, it made me realize how much I took for granted when I had you. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy with regret and longing. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of all the nights I'd spent questioning my worth after she walked away. But another part of me, the part that still carried traces of the men who'd once loved her deeply, felt a pang of sympathy. She sounded lost, broken in ways I hadn't anticipated. I miss you, she admitted quietly, her voice trembling. Not the version of you I left behind, but the real you. The Adam who believed in love, who fought for us even when it was hard. I miss us. Her confession left me reeling. For weeks, months, I'd worked tirelessly to rebuild myself, to create a life where she no longer held power over me. And now, here she was, offering me a chance to reclaim what we'd lost, to rewrite the ending of our story. But as tempting as it was to entertain the idea, I knew I couldn't make that decision lightly. Too much had changed, not just in her, but in me. The man she missed wasn't the same man sitting on this couch, wrestling with conflicting emotions. He'd grown stronger, wiser, more aware of his own needs and boundaries. I appreciate you calling, I said finally, choosing my words carefully. And I believe you when you say you're sorry. But Sarah, I'm not the same person you left. Neither are you. Maybe we can't go back to what we had, even if we wanted to. There was a long silence on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. You're right, she murmured. We can't. But maybe we can start somewhere new. Somewhere honest. Her suggestion lingered in the air, fragile and uncertain. Starting over wasn't impossible, it would take work, trust, and a willingness to confront the ghosts of our past. But as I sat there, weighing the possibility, I realized something important. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean erasing the pain she'd caused or pretending it never happened. Forgiveness meant acknowledging the hurt, accepting responsibility for my own role in it, and deciding whether I was willing to risk my heart again. I need time to think, I told her honestly. This isn't a decision I can make lightly. I understand, she replied, her voice softer now. Take all the time you need. Just, don't shut me out completely, okay? I want to earn your trust back, if you'll let me. When we ended the call, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the blank TV screen. Her words echoed in my mind, pulling me in opposite directions. Could we truly start over? Or was this just another attempt to rewrite history, to smooth over the cracks without addressing the foundation? The answer didn't come easily. Over the next few days, I wrestled with doubt, fear, and hope, all colliding in a chaotic storm of emotion. I talked to Mia, who listened patiently and reminded me that whatever choice I made had to be for me, not for anyone else. I revisited old memories, sifting through the wreckage of our marriage to determine what was salvageable, and what wasn't. And I spent hours journaling, untangling the web of thoughts that threatened to consume me. In the end, I came to a realization: Sarah wasn't the only one who deserved a second chance. So did I. A chance to choose happiness, to build a future rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. Whether that future included her remained to be seen, but for the first time, I felt ready to find out. When I called her back, my voice was steady, resolute. Let's try, I said simply. But this time, we do it differently. No games, no lies. Just honesty, and a lot of patience. Her response was immediate, filled with relief and gratitude. Thank you, Adam. For giving me another chance. For believing in us. As we hung up, I felt a flicker of hope, a fragile, tentative flame that promised warmth but required care to survive. Rebuilding wouldn't be easy, but I knew one thing for certain: I was done settling for less than I deserved. Whatever lay ahead, I was ready to face it, not as the man I used to be, but as the man I'd become. The weeks that followed our conversation were a delicate dance, a tentative tiptoeing around the wreckage of our past while trying to build something new. It wasn't easy. Every interaction felt like walking on thin ice, unsure whether we'd find solid ground or plunge into freezing waters. But for the first time, we weren't avoiding the cracks, we were confronting them head-on. We started slow, meeting for coffee at neutral locations, talking about everything except the pain that had driven us apart. Those early meetings were awkward, filled with long pauses and careful smiles as we navigated the unfamiliar territory of being strangers who once knew each other intimately. Yet, amidst the discomfort, there were moments of connection, glimmers of recognition that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. One afternoon, as we sat across from each other at a small cafe, Sarah leaned forward, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. Her expression was uncharacteristically serious, her eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about how much I owe you. Not just apologies, but understanding. You deserve to know why I did what I did. Why I left." I set my cup down, bracing myself. This was the moment I'd both dreaded and anticipated, the truth behind her actions, laid bare without excuses or deflection. "Okay," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. "Tell me." She took a deep breath, her gaze dropping to the table before meeting mine again. It wasn't just about wanting experience or needing space. It was fear, Adam. Fear of losing myself completely in this life we'd built together. Fear that if I stayed, I'd wake up one day and realize I'd given up too much of who I was to keep us afloat. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because they were unexpected, deep down, I'd suspected as much, but because they forced me to confront my own complicity in our unraveling. Had I pushed her to sacrifice parts of herself for the sake of our relationship? Had I failed to see the warning signs until it was too late? I thought staying would save us, she continued, her voice trembling. But instead, it suffocated me. And when I finally left, I thought I was running toward freedom. Toward something better. But all I found was emptiness. Because no matter where I went or who I was with, I couldn't escape the guilt of leaving you behind. Her confession was raw, unfiltered, a glimpse into the turmoil she'd carried silently for so long. For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who betrayed me, but as someone struggling to reconcile their choices with their conscience. Someone desperate to make amends. "I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight," she added quickly, tears welling in her eyes. I needed you to know. To understand why I did what I did, even if it doesn't excuse it." I reached across the table, placing my hand over hers. The gesture surprised even me, it was instinctive, born of empathy rather than obligation. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For telling me the truth. That's all I ever wanted." Her shoulders sagged with relief, as though a weight she'd been carrying for months had finally lifted. We sat there for a while longer, saying little but sharing more than words could convey. In that moment, I realized something important. Forgiveness wasn't about forgetting the past, it was about acknowledging it, and choosing to move forward anyway. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship began to shift. Slowly, tentatively, we rebuilt trust, not the blind faith we'd once shared, but a deeper, more intentional kind. One rooted in honesty, vulnerability, and mutual respect. We established boundaries, setting clear expectations for how we wanted to move forward. No more hiding behind vague promises or pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. If something bothered us, we talked about it, openly, honestly, without fear of judgment. It was exhausting at times, requiring patience and effort neither of us had anticipated. But it was also liberating, freeing us from the patterns that had trapped us in the past. Mia noticed the change in me almost immediately. During one of our regular coffee dates, she raised an eyebrow, studying me with a knowing smile. "You seem lighter," she observed. "Like whatever weight you've been carrying is finally lifting." I chuckled, nodding. "Yeah, I guess it is. Turns out, facing your demons isn't as scary as ignoring them." She grinned, leaning back in her chair. "And Sarah? How's she handling all this?" "She's trying," I admitted. "It's not perfect. Some days are harder than others. But she's committed to making things right, to earning my trust back. And honestly, so am I." Mia nodded thoughtfully, her expression softening. "That's all anyone can ask for, Adam. Progress, not perfection." Her words stayed with me long after we parted ways that day. Progress, not perfection. They became a mantra of sorts, guiding me through the ups and downs of rebuilding my life, and my marriage, with Sarah. Of course, there were setbacks. Days when old wounds reopened, forcing us to confront emotions we thought we'd buried. Nights when arguments escalated, reigniting the anger and hurt we'd worked so hard to overcome. But even in those moments, we held on to one unshakable truth: we were in this together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we faced them side by side, not as adversaries, but as partners. One evening, as we stood together on the balcony of her apartment, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Sarah turned to me, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if we hadn't tried again?" she asked softly. I glanced at her, surprised by the question. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But then I think about how far we've come. About the person I've become because of everything we've been through. And I realize, maybe none of it was wasted. Maybe it all led us here." She smiled, reaching for my hand. Here was imperfect, messy, and uncertain, but it was ours. A fragile yet beautiful beginning forged from the ashes of our past. As we stood there, fingers intertwined, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known was possible. Love wasn't about never falling apart, it was about finding the courage to put the pieces back together, even when it felt impossible. And for the first time in a long time, I believed we could do just that. Together. Just as Sarah and I began to settle into the rhythm of our new beginning, life decided to remind us that nothing, not even progress, is ever guaranteed. The unexpected turn came on a crisp autumn morning, when everything seemed to be falling into place. We had spent the previous evening at her apartment, laughing over takeout and reminiscing about old memories, this time without bitterness, only fondness. It felt like we were finally moving forward, not just rebuilding but creating something stronger than before. When I woke up the next day, there was a lightness in my chest, a quiet optimism I hadn't felt in years. But by mid-morning, that fragile sense of peace shattered. I was sitting at my desk at work, reviewing a document for an upcoming meeting, when my phone buzzed insistently on the table beside me. Glancing down, I saw it was Mia calling. Her name flashing across the screen brought a smile to my face. I hadn't spoken to her in a few days, and I assumed she was checking in to see how things were going with Sarah. "Hey," I answered warmly. "What's up?" There was a pause on the other end, long enough to make my stomach tighten. Then Mia's voice came through, unusually hesitant. "Adam. I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to come out with it. Have you talked to Sarah today?" My heart skipped a beat. "No, why? Is something wrong?" Another pause, heavier this time. "She's in the hospital." The words hit me like a freight train, knocking the air out of my lungs. "What? Why? What happened?" Mia exhaled sharply, her tone shifting to one of forced calm. "She collapsed earlier this morning. Her neighbor found her unconscious in her apartment and called an ambulance. They're running tests now, but... Adam, it doesn't look good." My hands trembled as I grabbed my jacket and keys, barely registering what I was doing. Hospital. Tests. Doesn't look good. The phrases looped endlessly in my mind, each one amplifying the panic rising inside me. How could this happen? Just last night, she'd been fine, happy, even. Laughing, teasing, planning our weekend together. By the time I reached the hospital, my thoughts were a chaotic jumble of fear and guilt. What if I'd missed something? What if she'd been trying to tell me she wasn't okay, and I hadn't listened? Mia met me in the waiting room, her face pale and drawn. She hugged me tightly, her arms offering a small measure of comfort amidst the storm. "I got here as soon as I heard," she said quietly. "They won't give me much information since I'm not family, but it's serious, Adam. Something neurological." Neurological. The word sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over me. I nodded numbly, pulling away from her embrace to approach the nurse's station. After explaining who I was directed to a private consultation room where a doctor awaited me. Dr. Patel was young, his expression sympathetic but guarded. He gestured for me to sit, then folded his hands on the table in front of him. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming in. I'll get straight to the point. Ms. Bennett suffered what appears to be a seizure earlier this morning. Initial scans indicate the presence of a mass in her brain, a tumor." The room tilted slightly, the edges of my vision blurring as his words sank in. A tumor. My throat closed up, making it impossible to speak. All I could manage was a faint nod, urging him to continue. "We're still determining whether it's benign or malignant," he explained gently. "But given its location and size, surgery may be necessary. Even then, recovery will depend on several factors. I know this is a lot to process, but we'll do everything we can to support both of you through this." When I finally found my voice, it was hoarse and shaky. "Can I see her?" He nodded. "Of course. She's stable for now, though she hasn't regained full consciousness yet. We'll keep monitoring her closely." Sitting by Sarah's bedside felt surreal. The woman who had fought so hard to rebuild our relationship, who had poured her heart out to me just days ago, now lay motionless, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily in the background. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her hand felt impossibly small in mine. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly. How had I not noticed something was wrong? Had she been hiding symptoms, afraid to burden me after everything we'd been through? Or had she truly been unaware herself, caught off guard by her body's betrayal? As I sat there, replaying every interaction we'd had recently, Mia appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to me silently, her eyes filled with concern. "Any updates?" she asked softly. "No," I replied, shaking my head. "Just waiting." She hesitated, then pulled up a chair beside me. "Adam, listen, you need to prepare yourself for whatever comes next. This isn't just about fixing your marriage anymore. It's about supporting her through something far bigger than either of you anticipated." Her words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. In the months since Sarah and I had started over, I'd allowed myself to believe we were past the worst of it, that the hardest battles had already been fought. But now, faced with the possibility of losing her entirely, I realized how naive I'd been. "I don't know if I can do this," I admitted, my voice breaking. "If I can handle watching her go through something like this." Mia placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just be there for her. That's what matters most." Over the next few days, Sarah slowly regained consciousness, though confusion clouded her eyes whenever she looked at me. The doctors explained that the tumor might be affecting her cognitive functions, at least temporarily. Each time she struggled to remember something, a detail from our conversation, a moment from our past, it felt like another piece of her slipping away. Yet, even in her weakened state, she remained determined. One afternoon, as I held her hand, she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Adam," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm scared." "I am too," I confessed, squeezing her hand gently. "But we'll get through this. Together." For the first time in weeks, she smiled, a faint, fleeting curve of her lips, but it was enough to remind me of the woman I loved. The woman I would fight for, no matter what. Because love isn't about perfection or guarantees. It's about showing up, even when the road ahead is uncertain, even when the outcome feels impossible to predict. And as I sat there, vowing to stand by her side through whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. The days that followed Sarah's diagnosis blurred into a haze of hospital visits, consultations, and sleepless nights. Each morning brought new uncertainties, each evening a fresh wave of fear. Yet amidst the chaos, there was an unspoken understanding between us. We were in this together, no matter how daunting the journey ahead. Sarah underwent surgery to remove the tumor, a procedure that left her physically fragile but alive. The doctors delivered cautious optimism. The mass appeared to be benign, though they warned of potential long-term effects depending on its location and impact on surrounding tissue. Recovery would be slow, requiring months of rehabilitation and therapy. But for now, she was stable, and that was enough. As she lay in her hospital bed recovering, I found myself grappling with emotions I hadn't fully anticipated. Relief warred with guilt, joy at her survival mingled with dread over the challenges still to come. Most of all, there was a profound sense of gratitude, for her presence, her resilience, and the chance to rebuild what we'd nearly lost not once, but twice. One afternoon, as I sat by her bedside reading aloud from a book she loved, Sarah interrupted me mid-sentence. "Adam," she said softly, her voice weaker than usual but steady. "I need to say something." I closed the book, setting it aside as I turned to face her. Her gaze was piercing, filled with a clarity that seemed almost otherworldly given her condition. "What is it?" I asked gently. She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the blanket draped across her lap. Everything that's happened, it's changed me. Changed us. And I don't just mean the tumor or the surgery. I mean, everything. What we went through before. How hard we fought to find our way back to each other." I nodded, unsure where she was going but willing to listen. "We've been through a lot," I agreed. "But we're stronger for it." Her lips curved into a faint smile, tinged with sadness. "Maybe. But I can't help wondering, do you ever think about what might have happened if we hadn't tried again? If we'd let things end when they first fell apart?" The question caught me off guard. It wasn't the first time we'd discussed it, but hearing her ask now, after everything we'd endured, felt different. More raw. More real. "I think about it sometimes," I admitted. "But honestly, Sarah, I don't regret giving us another shot. Even knowing how hard it's been, even facing this now, I wouldn't trade it. Because despite everything, being here with you, it's worth it." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling silently down her cheeks. She reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frailty. "Thank you," she whispered. "For fighting for me. For believing in us when I didn't believe in myself." Her words struck a chord deep within me, stirring memories of the man I used to be, the one who had clung to anger and bitterness after she left. That version of me would never have imagined sitting here now, holding her hand and vowing to see her through whatever came next. But here I was, transformed, not by perfection, but by perseverance. Recovery proved to be every bit as grueling as the doctors had warned. Physical therapy sessions left Sarah exhausted, her body struggling to relearn basic movements. Cognitive exercises tested her patience, revealing gaps in memory and processing speed that frustrated her endlessly. There were moments when despair threatened to overwhelm both of us, when the weight of what lay ahead felt insurmountable. But there were also moments of triumph, small victories that reminded us why we kept pushing forward. The first time she stood unassisted, leaning heavily on a walker but smiling through tears of pride. The day she remembered the name of a childhood friend during a memory exercise, her laughter filling the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. These milestones, however minor, became anchors in the storm, tethering us to hope when doubt loomed large. Through it all, Mia remained a steadfast presence in my life. She checked in regularly, offering encouragement and perspective whenever I needed it most. On particularly difficult days, she reminded me to take care of myself, to step away when necessary and recharge so I could continue supporting Sarah without burning out. "You're doing an amazing job, Adam," she told me one evening over coffee. "But don't forget, you're human too. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed. To cry. To need help." Her words resonated deeply, prompting me to confront emotions I'd been burying beneath layers of determination. I began journaling again, pouring my fears and frustrations onto paper in an effort to process them. Some nights, I cried alone in the shower, letting the hot water wash away the tension that had built up throughout the day. Other times, I leaned on Mia or Sarah's family for support, allowing myself to be vulnerable in ways I never thought possible. Months passed, and slowly but surely, Sarah began to regain strength. While some cognitive deficits persisted, she learned coping mechanisms to navigate daily life with confidence. By the time spring arrived, she was walking short distances without assistance and engaging in conversations that felt increasingly natural. One sunny afternoon, as we strolled through the park near her rehab facility, she stopped suddenly, turning to face me with an intensity that took me aback. "Adam," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I want to marry you." The request caught me completely off guard. We hadn't discussed marriage since before the tumor, and even then, it had been a distant dream rather than a concrete plan. Yet here she was, standing before me with a look of fierce determination etched across her face. "Are you sure?" I asked cautiously, searching her eyes for any hint of hesitation. "After everything we've been through, are you ready for that kind of commitment again?" She nodded resolutely. "More than ever. This whole experience has shown me what truly matters. Not perfection, not grand gestures, but love. Love that fights, forgives, and endures. Love like yours. Like ours." Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes as I pulled her into a gentle embrace. "Then yes," I murmured against her hair. "Let's get married. Let's build the future we've always dreamed of, together." Planning the wedding was a humbling yet joyful process. With Sarah's health improving steadily, we decided to keep things simple, an intimate ceremony surrounded by close friends and family, held in the same park where we'd shared countless memories over the years. On the day of the wedding, as I stood beneath a canopy of blooming trees waiting for her to walk down the aisle, I couldn't help reflecting on how far we'd come. From betrayal and heartbreak to forgiveness and healing, our journey had been anything but conventional. Yet standing there, watching her approach with a radiant smile lighting up her face, I knew one thing for certain. Love wasn't about avoiding storms, it was about weathering them together. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them side by side. As Sarah joined me beneath the canopy, her hand finding mine with unwavering certainty, I realized something else: endings aren't always final. Sometimes, they're simply beginnings in disguise. The wedding day passed in a blur of laughter, tears, and quiet moments that felt suspended in time. As Sarah and I exchanged vows beneath the canopy of trees, surrounded by the people who mattered most, it was impossible not to feel a profound sense of gratitude, for the love we'd fought so hard to reclaim, for the second chances life had granted us, and for the resilience that had carried us through even the darkest days. But as magical as the ceremony was, the real work began afterward. Marriage wasn't just about the promises made under a canopy of blooming trees, it was about living those promises every single day, especially when life inevitably threw its curveballs. And throw them it did. In the months following our wedding, Sarah's recovery continued to progress, though not without setbacks. Cognitive therapy revealed lingering challenges, moments of forgetfulness, difficulty multitasking, occasional lapses in judgment that required patience and adaptation on both our parts. Some days, she grew frustrated with herself, her frustration spilling over into arguments neither of us wanted. Other times, she withdrew into silence, retreating into a cocoon of self-doubt that left me scrambling to find ways to support her without overstepping. Through it all, we clung to the foundation we'd rebuilt: honesty, vulnerability, and an unshakable commitment to facing whatever came next together. We learned to communicate openly about her struggles, finding humor in the small missteps and celebrating each milestone, no matter how minor. Slowly but surely, we adjusted to this new normal, a life shaped by scars but also by hope. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching an old movie, Sarah turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever think about kids? She asked suddenly, her voice soft but steady. The question caught me off guard. In the whirlwind of the past year, reconciliation, illness, recovery, marriage, the idea of starting a family hadn't crossed my mind. Not because I didn't want children, but because it had seemed like a distant dream, something to consider only after everything else stabilized. I guess I haven't thought about it much lately, I admitted, setting aside the book I'd been half reading. Why? Do you? She hesitated, her fingers tracing absent patterns on the blanket draped across her lap. I've always wanted kids, she said quietly. Even before everything fell apart between us. But now, with everything that's happened, she trailed off, her gaze dropping to her hands. With everything that's happened, what? I prompted gently, reaching for her hand. Her eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of fear and longing. What if I can't be the kind of mom I want to be? What if the tumor changes things, my memory, my ability to care for them? What if I'm not enough? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For all her strength and determination, Sarah still carried doubts about her worthiness, not just as a partner, but as a person capable of giving and receiving love. The tumor had shaken her confidence in ways neither of us fully understood, leaving her questioning whether she could take on another role that demanded so much of her. You don't have to figure it all out right now, I told her softly, squeezing her hand. And you're not alone in this. If we decide to have kids, we'll face whatever comes together. Just like we've done with everything else. Her lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained uncertain. It's scary, isn't it? Wanting something so badly but being afraid of failing at it. It is, I agreed. But maybe that's part of being ready. Being scared doesn't mean you're not strong enough, it just means you care enough to worry. We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future, not making plans, exactly, but imagining possibilities. It was the first time since her diagnosis that we allowed ourselves to dream beyond survival, to envision a life that included not just healing but growth. By the time we went to bed, there was a newfound lightness in the air, a tentative hope that felt both fragile and exhilarating. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, the idea of parenthood began to take root. We started researching options, consulting specialists to ensure Sarah's health wouldn't pose risks during pregnancy. To our relief, the doctors assured us that while certain precautions would be necessary, there was no reason she couldn't carry a child safely. As we navigated the early stages of trying, I found myself reflecting on how far we'd come. Parenthood represented more than just a new chapter, it symbolized trust. Trust in ourselves, in each other, and in the belief that love could withstand uncertainty. After everything we'd endured, the prospect of creating something beautiful together, a family built on resilience and forgiveness, felt like the ultimate testament to our journey. Then, one crisp winter morning, Sarah woke me with tears streaming down her face. At first, panic seized me. Had something gone wrong? Was she in pain? But then she held up a small white stick, 2 pink lines glowing brightly against its surface. "We're pregnant," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. All the fears, hopes, and dreams we'd shared over the past year coalesced into this single moment, a confirmation that life, despite its unpredictability, had a way of surprising us when we least expected it. Pulling her into my arms, I kissed her forehead, my own tears mingling with hers. "We're going to be parents," I murmured, hardly able to believe the words myself. Pregnancy brought its own set of challenges. Morning sickness hit Sarah harder than anticipated, exacerbated by the lingering effects of her cognitive deficits. Fatigue weighed heavily on her, forcing her to cut back on therapy sessions and rely more on me for support. Yet even in the midst of exhaustion and discomfort, there were moments of pure joy, feeling the baby kick for the first time, hearing its heartbeat echo through the ultrasound room, watching Sarah glow with a happiness I hadn't seen since before the tumor. By the time summer arrived, our home was filled with preparations for the baby's arrival. Nursery walls were painted soft pastel hues, tiny onesies folded neatly into drawers, and shelves lined with books we hoped to read aloud someday. Each item served as a reminder of the miracle growing inside Sarah, a tangible manifestation of the love and perseverance that had brought us here. On a warm August evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah rested her head on my shoulder, one hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked quietly. I smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "No one's ever really ready, are they? But we've got each other, and that's more than enough." She nodded, her expression softening. "You're right. We've faced worse. Together." As the sky blazed with streaks of orange and purple, I realized something profound. Endings may shape us, but beginnings define us. Our story hadn't followed a straight path, it had been messy, painful, and unpredictable. But it had also been redemptive, teaching us that love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing each other, again and again, even when the road ahead is uncertain. And as we prepared to welcome a new life into the world, I knew one thing for certain: whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them side by side. Because that's what love looks like, not flawless, but enduring. As the years unfolded, our little family continued to grow, not just in size, but in depth. The challenges that once seemed insurmountable became part of the fabric of our lives, woven into the tapestry of who we were becoming. Parenthood had taught us patience, resilience, and the art of finding joy in the smallest moments. Yet, life being what it is, wasn't done testing us yet. When our daughter turned 5, Sarah began experiencing subtle changes again, headaches that lingered longer than usual, moments of disorientation that left her frustrated and anxious. At first, we tried to brush them off as stress or fatigue from juggling work, parenting, and everything else life demanded. But deep down, a familiar fear crept in, whispering warnings neither of us wanted to hear. One evening, after putting our daughter to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with a worried expression. She'd been unusually quiet all day, and I could tell something was weighing heavily on her mind. "Adam," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "I think I need to see the doctor." My heart sank. "What's going on? Are you okay?" She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "It's stupid, probably nothing, but I've been forgetting things again. Little things, like where I put my keys or what I walked into a room for. And the headaches, they're worse this time." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Memories of her diagnosis years ago flooded back, bringing with them a wave of dread. We had come so far since then, built a life filled with love, laughter, and hope. The thought of facing another battle felt unbearable. But there was no choice. If there was even a chance something was wrong, we couldn't ignore it. So the next morning, we made an appointment with her neurologist. The waiting game was agonizing. Days stretched into weeks as tests were ordered, scans were taken, and consultations were scheduled. Each phone call or email from the doctor's office sent my pulse racing, while Sarah oscillated between stoic determination and quiet despair. Our daughter, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her, continued to fill our days with giggles and questions about why the sky was blue or how caterpillars turned into butterflies. Finally, the results came in. Sitting across from the same doctor who had delivered the news about Sarah's tumor years earlier, we braced ourselves for the worst. "The good news," Dr. Patel began, his tone measured but kind, "is that the tumor hasn't returned." However, he hesitated, glancing at his notes before meeting our eyes. "There are signs of scarring and inflammation in the area surrounding the original site. It's likely causing the symptoms you've described: memory lapses, headaches, occasional confusion." Sarah exhaled sharply, relief mingling with apprehension. "So, what does that mean? Will it get worse?" "It's hard to say," he replied honestly. "The brain is complex, and every case is unique. For now, we'll focus on managing your symptoms through medication and therapy. But I won't lie to you, it's possible these issues could persist or worsen over time." The weight of his words settled over us like a heavy blanket. While the absence of a new tumor was a blessing, the uncertainty of her condition loomed large. Would she always struggle with memory lapses? Could they impact her ability to care for our daughter as she grew older? What did this mean for our future? On the drive home, Sarah stared out the window, her reflection pale against the glass. "I hate this," she muttered bitterly. Just when I thought we were safe. I reached over, placing a hand on her knee. "We'll figure it out. Like we always do." She turned to me, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "What if I can't be the mom she needs me to be? What if I forget important things, her birthday, school events, the way she likes her hair braided?" "You won't," I said firmly, though doubt gnawed at the edges of my own resolve. "And if you do, we'll find ways to adapt. We'll write things down, set reminders, ask for help when we need it. You're not alone in this, Sarah. We're a team." Her lips curved into a faint smile, though sadness lingered in her gaze. "A team, huh? Guess that means you'll have to pick up the slack when I mess up." "Always," I promised, squeezing her hand. "That's what partners do." In the months that followed, we adjusted to this new reality. Medications helped manage the headaches, and cognitive therapy provided tools to cope with memory lapses. Still, there were setbacks, days when frustration boiled over, when Sarah snapped at me or retreated into silence, overwhelmed by guilt and self-doubt. On those days, I reminded her of how far she'd come, of the strength she'd shown in the face of adversity. And slowly, she began to believe me. Our daughter, ever perceptive, started noticing the changes too. One afternoon, as we sat together coloring, she looked up at Sarah with wide, curious eyes. "Mommy, why do you forget stuff sometimes?" Sarah froze, caught off guard by the question. After a moment, she set down her crayon and pulled our daughter onto her lap. "Sweetheart, Mommy has some boo-boos in her brain that make it harder to remember things sometimes. But that doesn't mean I love you any less. Okay." Our daughter nodded solemnly, wrapping her arms around Sarah's neck. "I'll help you remember, Mommy. I'll tell you lots of stories so your brain gets stronger." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes as she hugged her tightly. "Thank you, baby girl." That would make me very happy. Watching the two of them together filled me with a mix of emotions, pride, gratitude, and a fierce determination to protect them both. Life had thrown us more curveballs than most people endure in a lifetime, yet here we were, still standing, still fighting for each other. One evening, as we tucked our daughter into bed, she asked a question that stopped us both in our tracks. Will you and Daddy always take care of me, no matter what happens? Sarah glanced at me, her eyes shining with emotion. Then she knelt beside the bed, taking our daughter's small hands in hers. Yes, sweetheart. No matter what happens, we'll always take care of you. Because that's what families do. They stick together, even when things get tough. And they choose each other, I added, ruffling her hair affectionately. Every single day. Our daughter smiled sleepily, snuggling deeper under the covers. Good night, Mommy. Good night, Daddy. As we turned off the light and closed her bedroom door, Sarah leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder. Do you think she'll understand someday? She asked softly. How hard we've worked to give her a happy life. I think she already understands, I replied, wrapping an arm around her. Even if she doesn't have the words for it yet. She sees how much we love her, and how much we love each other. That's enough. Years later, as we watched our daughter graduate high school, I realized how right I'd been. Despite the challenges, despite the fears and uncertainties, we had created a life rooted in love, resilience, and unwavering commitment. Sarah's condition remained a constant presence, requiring ongoing management and adaptation, but it never defined us. Instead, it reminded us of the importance of cherishing every moment, of choosing each other again and again, no matter what lay ahead. As fireworks lit up the night sky during the graduation celebration, Sarah slipped her hand into mine. You know, she said, her voice warm with contentment, we've been through hell and back. But somehow, we made it. I kissed her temple, smiling as I gazed at our daughter dancing beneath the stars. Yeah, we did. Together. Because that's what love looks like, not flawless, but enduring. Not perfect, but whole. Years passed like leaves drifting gently to the ground, each one marking a season of growth, change, and discovery. Our daughter grew into a bright, compassionate young woman with dreams as vast as the horizon. Sarah's condition remained a constant companion, its challenges evolving alongside her, but never overshadowing the life we had built together. We adapted, learned, and found beauty in the cracks that time etched into our story. When our daughter left for college, a milestone neither of us could have imagined during those early days of uncertainty, we stood side by side at the airport, waving goodbye as she disappeared through security. It was bittersweet, watching her spread her wings, knowing how much of ourselves we'd poured into raising her. But it was also triumphant, a testament to the resilience of love and family. You did good, I told Sarah as we walked back to the car, my arm around her shoulders. We both did. She smiled, though there was a wistfulness in her eyes. I just hope she knows how proud we are of her. She does, I assured her. And she'll carry that with her wherever she goes. Life without our daughter buzzing around the house felt quieter, emptier. The mornings no longer began with hurried breakfasts and last-minute scrambles for misplaced homework, evenings were devoid of laughter-filled conversations about school drama or pop culture obsessions. Instead, Sarah and I settled into a rhythm of simplicity, long walks in the park, shared meals cooked slowly on weekends, evenings spent reading or watching old movies. But beneath the surface, something shifted. Without the daily distractions of parenting, we began to confront truths we'd kept buried, the weight of Sarah's illness, the toll it had taken on both of us, and the unspoken fear that had lingered since her diagnosis years ago. Her memory lapses became more frequent, her moments of confusion harder to navigate. Medications helped, but they couldn't stop the inevitable march of time. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Sarah turned to me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, one of quiet resolve tinged with sadness. Adam, she said softly, I think it's time. Time for what? I asked, though deep down, I already knew. For me to let go, she replied, her voice steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. Not completely, not yet. But I can feel it, Adam. This isn't going to get better. And I don't want to wait until it gets worse. Her words hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under before I could catch my breath. No, I said firmly, shaking my head. We're not giving up. Not now, not ever. It's not about giving up, she insisted, reaching for my hand. It's about accepting. About making peace with what is, and preparing for what will be. I wanted to argue, to insist that we fight harder, try longer. But looking into her eyes, I saw something I couldn't deny, acceptance. Peace. A courage that made my heart ache with admiration and sorrow. Over the next few months, we worked together to make arrangements, practical ones, emotional ones. Sarah began meeting with a counselor to process her fears and hopes, while I reached out to friends and family, leaning on their support in ways I never had before. Together, we created a plan for her care, ensuring she would be comfortable and surrounded by love no matter what happened. Our daughter came home for winter break, sensing the gravity of the situation even if we hadn't explicitly told her everything. She spent hours sitting with Sarah, talking about memories, sharing stories, and laughing until tears streamed down their faces. Watching them together filled me with a mixture of heartache and gratitude, for the bond they shared, for the time we still had, however fleeting it might be. Then, one cold January morning, everything changed. Sarah woke disoriented, struggling to form coherent sentences. By the time paramedics arrived, she was barely responsive. At the hospital, doctors explained that the inflammation in her brain had worsened unexpectedly, causing swelling that put pressure on critical areas. Surgery wasn't an option, the risks outweighed any potential benefits. All they could do was keep her comfortable. As I sat beside her bed, holding her hand and whispering reassurances, I felt the walls I'd built around my grief begin to crumble. Fear clawed at my chest, threatening to consume me. But then Sarah opened her eyes, just slightly, and looked at me with a clarity that took my breath away. "I'm not afraid," she murmured, her voice weak but resolute. "Promise me you won't be either." Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. "I promise." That night, surrounded by loved ones, Sarah slipped away peacefully. Her passing left a void so profound it felt like the world itself had shifted on its axis. For weeks, I moved through life in a fog, numb to everything except the ache of her absence. Months later, as spring bloomed and the world awakened from its winter slumber, I found myself standing in the park where we'd once dreamed of starting a family. Memories flooded back, the laughter, the tears, the countless moments that had shaped us into who we were. I carried a small box with me, containing a letter I'd written to Sarah after her death. "I miss you every day," I whispered, clutching the box tightly. "But I'm trying to live the way you taught me, to choose love, even when it hurts. To find joy, even when it feels impossible." As I placed the box beneath a tree we planted together years ago, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Turning, I saw a figure approaching, an older woman walking slowly, supported by a cane. Something about her seemed familiar, though I couldn't place her immediately. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Are you Adam?" I frowned, surprised. "Yes, do I know you?" She smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Not exactly. But your wife, she spoke of you often." So much love in her voice. Confusion washed over me. "My wife? You mean Sarah?" The woman nodded, her smile widening. "I met her during her therapy sessions. She told me about your journey, the struggles, the triumphs, the love that held you together. She said you were a rock. That without you, she wouldn't have made it as far as she did." Her words caught me off guard, stirring emotions I thought I'd locked away. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice thick with emotion. "That means more than I can express." She patted my arm gently. "She wanted me to give you this." From her bag, she pulled out a folded piece of paper, weathered but intact. She wrote it before, her voice trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Trembling, I unfolded the note. Sarah's handwriting greeted me, shaky but unmistakable. "Dearest Adam. If you're reading this, it means I've gone ahead to explore whatever lies beyond. Don't grieve for me, I lived a full, beautiful life because of you. Because of us. Love doesn't end when we part ways, it transforms. It becomes the air we breathe, the stars we wish upon, the quiet moments that remind us we're never truly alone. Keep choosing love, my darling. Always. With all my heart. Sarah." Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the note to my chest. The unexpected encounter, the stranger bearing Sarah's final gift, felt like a message from the universe, reminding me that love transcends even the boundaries of life and death. In that moment, I understood something profound: endings may shape us, but love defines us. And though Sarah was gone, her love remained, a guiding light, a source of strength, a reminder that beginnings and endings are merely chapters in a story that never truly ends. Because love isn't bound by time or space. It lives on, in memories, in legacies, in the choices we make every day to honor the people who shaped us. And as I walked away from the park, the sun warming my face, I knew I would carry Sarah's love with me forever. Together, apart, always.